Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to your new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius transit deep dive. As of last night at 7:11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturn finally moved into Aries, where it will remain for the next 2.5 years for its transit throughout the fire sign. And in the coming days, on February 17th, we will have our solar eclipse in Aquarius. And then just 3 days after that, we have our Saturn and Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aquarius. And there are a lot of moving pieces to take note of in the next week or so, but I do want to focus specifically on the eclipse today because there are a lot of insane conjunctions that we will see on the day of the eclipse as it stands. So as you can see in the chart to the left, I pulled it up from astro.com. We have a lot of direct conjunctions that are going to play a major role in the eclipse energy. Eclipses in general are either the brand new beginning or the finality, the ending of a cycle that we're going into. And I think this Aquarius eclipse kind of joins in two different beginnings and endings. For one, as we see right now with the system as it stands, the structures that have been put in place by the Pluto and Leo generation, the structures that have been eradicated long before any of us were even born, are now crumbling to dust because with Pluto and Leo, there is a heavy focus on individualism. There's a heavy focus on how can I maximize productivity, follow the binaural cycle of day, night, 5-day work week. How can we utilize this structure in order to benefit the few by exploiting the many? That's the system we've been existing in with the Pluto in Aquarius, or with the Pluto and Leo generation that they have built, with the structures that they have allowed to be erected. But with Aquarius, we're moving away from this idea of individualism and the struggles of many to benefit the few into the collective gains, into we if I rise, we all rise. It's not one person stepping on the other because Aquarius is very much focused on the collective. Yes, on one hand, Aquarius is structures, it's stability, it's the institutions that create our society, but more importantly, it's the individuals that make up the culture of the institutions that create our society. So again, it's moving away from exploiting the individual and going towards this idea of we are all benefiting. I am tapping into my unique gifts as an individual so I can bring those gifts as an offering to aid the collective. It is not just me rising above others and stepping on people to get there. It is me rising above and putting my hand down and picking up those people and allowing myself to be picked up by the people above me. And eventually we're all going to be on a level playing field. That's the energy we're moving with as Pluto moves through Aquarius for the next 17 years or so, and especially when the North Node enters Aquarius later this year on July 27th, 2026. And this Aquarius eclipse it's the start of that. So it's the end of the system as it stands. It's the crumbling of the structures of institutions that again only benefited the few at the expense of the many, so that we can take the wealth of the few, because Pluto also, if we look at the etymology and the translation of Pluto, it directly translates to the word wealth. If we take that idea, the idea that the wealth that has been established as the collective, as the society that we live in, as the system as it stands, the wealth of the system currently is in the hands of the few, but it's going to be transferred to benefit the many. And it's possible that even our institution of wealth changes. So it's not so focused on exorbitant wealth, on just money. We could be looking at going back to barter system, which we can see greatly expanding in the Aquarius seasons, or even just the idea of helping individuals because it feels good to help individuals. Like the currency is the feeling you get by being a part of something bigger than yourself. That's very Aquarian focus. And again, this eclipse is going to be the start of that. It's going to be the start of the crumbling of the wealth system as it stands. So we can enter into a more collective, more unified idea of what it means to be tapped into the collective rather than just focused on your own individual gains. And I use the app Insight Timer, and I think 2 days ago, the quote from Insight Timer was, "Let go or be dragged." And that's what I'm kind of getting from this Pluto and Leo generation specifically, who refuse to change with the times, who refuse to let go of their greed and their desire just to have more, more, more. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I don't care who I have to step on to get there. The people who cannot let go of that structure of institutionalized living will be dragged because the collective's moving. We're going towards this new beginning of prosperity for all. It's not individuality for individuality's sake. It's individuality because we recognize we all have unique gifts that can benefit the whole. So, going back to the eclipse specifically, again, we have major direct conjunctions that we're working with. And to start off, we have Vesta, which is our sacred flame. Vesta is a Roman goddess that she never took human form, but she is in every single fire. She is that sacred devotional flame we feel within us that keeps us connected to our spirituality through our routines. And again, through that sense of devotion we have for ourselves, for our routines, for our sacred spiritual practices, and for the world around us. It's very rooted in Mother Earth and the elements as well, because again, Vesta is the flame herself. So Vesta, the sacred flame is conjoining Mars, which is the fire that drives us forward. It's our passions. It's that feeling that we get inside that just makes us want to move. It's very physical. It's very action oriented. So Vesta as the sacred flame joining up with Mars, which is the fire that moves us. This is just two flames, two big flames coming together to make a bigger flame. So it's this idea that we're being lit up from the inside about what we are passionate about what we are willing to be devoted to in order to allow those passions to grow and ignite and drive us forward towards this whatever this new beginning represents for us as individuals, which again is very relevant to what it represents for us as a collective. It always starts internally. But again, I want to emphasize this so much that Aquarius does not just mean we are all merging into the collective. It doesn't mean we're dropping our unique sense of selves just to become one with the crowd. Because Aquarius does not like to be one with the crowd. Aquarius is eccentric. Aquarius is the outlier, if you will, the black sheep. But it's that idea of taking that individuality and allowing all of us to be our own black sheeps so that we become a herd of these awesome black sheeps that have all of their own individual unique gifts that can benefit the whole. So that Mars Vesta conjunction is each of us finding our sacred flame within us, finding that passion, that spark that drives us forward, and the energy that we need to stick to it, to be devoted to those passions in order to allow those seeds to plant, to burn away everything that wasn't meant for you in general, allow the seeds to plant, to then sprout anew. So that's the first direct conjunction we will talk about. And then, of course, we have the actual eclipse happening, the sun and the moon conjunct in Aquarius at 28 degrees and 50 solar arc minutes. While it's not happening at that critical degree, at the 29-degree mark, there is still a very matured identity and a matured energy when it comes to that 28-degree mark. And to me, the 28 degrees is more about the artistry rather than the finality. So it's like finding the artistry within the uniqueness that 28 degrees Aquarius represents. And that's where the eclipse itself stations exact, is at that 28-degree mark. So how can you find that artistry within you to connect to that sacred flame and your passions to drive you forward? And that ties into our North Node and Venus conjunction at 8 degrees in Pisces. And this conjunction is very close. It's at 8 degrees and only 6 solar arc minutes away. So they are almost directly on top of each other, almost as precise as you can get. And Venus is a representation of what we find beauty in the world and what we are attracted to in the world, what beauty we see externally and how we can take what we see externally and find beauty within and allow that beauty to grow internally so we become a mirror to the beauty we see in the world around us. And the North Node is our destiny. It's what we are evolving to, not only as individuals, but as a collective. And especially when this is a collective transit, this is what we are evolving to allow beauty to grow and expand, not only within ourselves, but in the world around us. Because again, everything starts internally. It allows that beauty to expand. So then the beauty within us expands. So then we smile at a person we don't usually smile at when we cross the street. And then they sense the beauty in you. And then they carry that beauty to other people. And then they nurture their garden with that same sense of beauty and connection and love that they felt in that moment that you just shared a smile. It's how we can expand that sense of beauty so that the collective is evolving towards a greater sense of beauty. And that beauty is directly and intrinsically linked to the sacred flame that we find and discover within ourselves and within our passions that we nurture to move us forward. And again, because the North Node is about the destiny, it's about the forward movement, it's about the progress, it's about where we are headed as a society, what we are evolving into and moving away from. We're moving away from this idea of like Virgo and overly structured identity and having to be overly perfect about things, because Virgo loves perfectionism, because Virgo is naturally very good at what it does and it expects that perfectionism that they carry within themselves or it carries within it to be mirrored within the world. Pisces is messy and it's okay with being messy. And that's kind of the energy we're moving with right now. It's like the beauty and the flaws idea when it's conjoining Venus, the North Node and Venus together. It's finding beauty in the imperfections and recognizing that the imperfections and the perceived flaws are the beauty itself, and that we don't have to be perfect and we don't have to be structured. We just have to do it. We just have to try. That's the energy I'm getting from that Pisces North Node conjunction there. And then there's no conjunctions with the next one, Mercury in Pisces, but that Pisces Mercury is making a direct trine to our Jupiter in Cancer, both at 16 degrees Pisces for Mercury and Cancer for Jupiter. And our Jupiter is still retrograde for the next 3 weeks or so while this eclipse is happening. So we still have this idea of internal awareness, right? Because when retrogrades occur, and especially when it's in Cancer, which is a sign of our roots and our inner emotions, which is ruled by the moon, when retrogrades occur, it brings us in and it allows us the opportunity to really nurture and acknowledge and grow and expand our own personal understanding of how our emotions function and how we can since it's Jupiter, how we can nurture this sense of luck and wisdom and wellness within ourselves. So then by the time Jupiter turns around, we feel so connected to our roots, to our core, to our emotional center that we are not feeling inundated or overwhelmed by the tides when Jupiter does turn around and the tides begin to shift as it goes direct and moves more towards Leo, which is the fire sign, which is a whole other story, which we won't get into right now. But this trine, this very beneficial and positive, harmonious energy working between Mercury, our sign of communication, and personal expression, and the ways in which we relate to others, not only in terms of communication and understanding, but how our brains sense and see patterns within ourselves. Because again, the Jupiter brings us within. So, what patterns are we sensing and seeing in ourselves where maybe we've been a little bit over emotional and maybe took things too personally, which really weren't meant to be personal? And how we can use those tidings, right? How we can use those tidings to see ourselves, see our own patterns, see how maybe we disconnected ourselves from the unity that we want to birth into existence with this Aquarius eclipse. How can we take things less personally while still being personalized? That's kind of what this Jupiter and Mercury trine represents here, this direct trine. It's this personal expression, it's the seeing the patterns, it's the allowing that harmony between the inner world to reflect outwardly and be expressed through your personal communications with others, and even with mother nature around you, right? How can you bring more harmony and harmonious energies to the conversations and the expressions that you have externally, as well as the conversations and the personal expression you have within yourself? Because it all starts within. How many times am I going to say that in this video? It all starts within. It all starts within our minds and our bodies and our souls. Because anything that we nurture within ourselves, we naturally give out to the world. So use that energy of Mercury trine Jupiter to nurture that sense of loving understanding, loving awareness, and loving communications. If you have any like mental blocks or mindsets that you think aren't necessarily the healthiest, or you have a habit of maybe being mean to yourself when you make a mistake, this is a great day to put those stories to rest. And actually, speaking of stories, I'm going to jump ahead of the Saturn and Neptune conjunction for just a quick second to go towards that Chiron and Eris conjunction in later degrees Aries. Now, these are two asteroids, and with asteroids, I usually do a tighter orb. I'm usually more strict with it and only go up to 1 degree and 50 or and 30 solar arc minutes, but sometimes I'll let it stretch when it feels relevant and I'll go up to 2 degrees. And actually, now that I look closer, this conjunction is within that 1 degree 30 solar arc minute orb. So it still is relevant here. They are not right next to each other, but this idea of the Chiron Eris conjunction and reframing the stories and the narratives you tell yourself about who you are and what you've been through and how you move through the world, this is a sign telling you to burn any sense of victim mentality, victim complex you have to the ground. Eris is the asteroid of discord. It's the asteroid of chaos. It's the asteroid of destruction. It's bringing sacred destruction to Chiron, our deepest wounds, and also our efforts to heal them. But with Eris and Chiron together here, this is saying any old narratives, any old stories about your traumas or what you've been through or the sob stories you've told yourself. And yes, maybe you've had a lot of trauma in your life. I'm not dismissing that. Maybe you genuinely have been the victim of very harsh um, treatment by other people, whether physical, mental, emotional, relational, spiritual. It doesn't matter. I am not dismissing the fact that we have all been through some pretty dark shit in our life. And if you haven't, God bless you, you are an outlier. But this is a conjunction that asks us to be very aware of the stories we tell ourselves and how we become identified with the stories we tell ourselves about the traumas that we faced, and how maybe we may still be telling ourselves certain stories like, oh, I can't do this new thing because I'm very sensitive to this and I'm scared of that. Says who? Says who? That's what Eris conjunct Chiron tells us. Says who? Says you. You're telling yourself a story about who you are and how you move through the world. So, with all of this other harmonious energy, right? And Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. Aries is naturally a fairly selfish sign, we'll call it. And while this Neptune and Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees Aries is asking us to open the new book, start a new journey about the things that we see ourselves doing long term, especially in terms of our spiritual commitments. We'll get back to that in a second. Later degrees Aries with this Chiron Eris conjunction. That's asking us, how have you been telling yourself stories that has been keeping you trapped in your own individuality complex and disconnected from the whole? What stories about the traumas have you faced Can you allow to burn? Can you allow chaos to reign and shake up that story like a snow globe and then smash the snow globe so you're no longer trapped in that dome of victimhood and a victim mentality? So you can gain more self awareness by exposing yourself to the truth, to the greater widened perspectives of what your traumas and what your pains and what your hardships have actually sculpted you to be. You get to write your story. You get to live your story. So stop telling yourself the story, this sob story about how you've been victimized and hurt and traumatized and all of these things and how that trauma is what made you who you are. Says who? Says you. So change the story. You need to, because that trauma story is keeping you trapped in individualism, which is keeping you separate from the whole, which is keeping you separate from the collective, and more importantly, keeping you disconnected from your true gifts and the true benefits that you can bring to society by discovering those gifts. You need to allow the story to burn away so you can start writing a new one. And that's what this Saturn and Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries represents. 0 degrees Aries is not only the first degree of Aries, it's the first degree of the entire zodiacal wheel. Talk about a brand new fucking beginning. Talk about a brand new fucking beginning being delivered to us just before and just after, because Saturn transitioned into Aries yesterday, 3 days before this eclipse occurs, and then 3 days after the eclipse, we'll have that direct conjunction directly on top of one another. Saturn, father time. Right? It's the disciplinary action. It's the long term growth. It's not allowing ourselves to settle for short term gains, because we know if we put in a little bit of hard work now, and if we're disciplined enough to not go out to our friend's cabana pool party this Saturday, because we know if we don't use the Saturday towards nurturing what the work we want to see grow in our life, then we're never going to do it, right? Saturn is about putting short term benefits on hold. Because you know, if you just sacrifice this one weekend or this one day or just this one month, if you just put your nose to the books for this time right now, you are going to be smooth sailing when it comes time to reap the benefits, to get to the harvest of that. When you allow Saturn to guide you, your harvest at the end of the harvest season, right? It's the difference between having a cornucopia of all of these very fresh, amazing produce products that are juiciest, like the juiciest fruits and the tastiest thing. It's having these plump tomatoes versus having tomatoes that grew to maybe be this big, and a cucumber that's this big, and a zucchini that's like decrepit. That's what Saturn offers. It's father time, because it's how we can use time to devote ourselves to our commitments, right? That's not to say you always have to, turn in and never go out and party and never have a good time and never have friends, because Saturn also likes balance. Saturn doesn't want you to be overly devoted, though he does want you to make sure you make time in your schedule regularly to devote yourself to your passions and to what you're committed to, because that's how you see that long term growth. That's how you actually get the long term benefits of the long term growth. So, Saturn moving into Aries, very first degree of the very first sign of the zodiac. We're starting on a brand new fool's journey, right? The fool in the tarot. And joining up with Neptune, which represents our spirituality and occasionally disillusionment, but I would argue Neptune was more disillusioned in Pisces, where it's at home, where it feels really comfortable to just kick its feet up and just not really do much in terms of like shifting the tides of spirituality, especially in the later degrees of Pisces, which it has been for a while, but it's been in Aries for about 2 weeks now. When Neptune and Saturn join up, Neptune, the planet of our spirituality and our in depth understanding of self and how we flow with the tides. Neptune joining up with Saturn. It's a brand new beginning, 0 degrees, brand new hero's journey, brand new beginning of how we can be newly devoted to an emerging spiritual practice within ourselves and within the collective. And it's this idea of tapping into your individuality again, because spirituality is where we find our gifts. We discover our gifts through our sense of spirituality, because spirituality is all about going inward and discovering the self. And that's where we discover everything we are, which includes our gifts. So, brand new beginning of spirituality, commitment of Saturn, devoting time, devoting patience, because that's also Saturn. That's also Saturn. And Neptune is also patience, because it's a long term transit. Devoting time, patience, and structured energy towards our spiritual disciplines, towards our sense of self, towards discovering our sense of self, and using this brand new start of this brand new hero's journey to discover those gifts, so then we can nurture that inner flame, bring the two flames together to make a bigger flame, find the beauty within ourselves, so then we can start mirroring that beauty out into the world. And slowly but surely, as we discover our gifts and continually discover our gifts, and become a mirror to others who are also discovering their own gifts. And maybe we both see each other's gifts and we're like, wait, you can do that. Maybe I can do that too. And then we're awakening more gifts that we didn't even know existed within us just by co-creating and being in coherence with the people around us. That's what that 0 degrees Aries represents with the Saturn Neptune conjunction. So going back to the Eris and Chiron conjunction, burn away the stories you're telling yourself. Burn them to the ground. If the stories still are rooted in victim complex. Because the time we're moving into, especially when Aquarius or when the North Node goes into Aquarius in July later this year, times we're moving into, there's no space for victim mentality. There's no space for that. So whatever you got to do to heal and release and again, reframe your story so that it's empowering rather than dampening, this is the time to do it. This eclipse is the time to do it. This eclipse is the time to do it. If you haven't already started, this eclipse is the time to do it. And as a matter of fact, the days leading up to the eclipse is the time to do it. And our Uranus and Taurus isn't playing a huge role in this. It is making a somewhat tight square to our eclipse as it stands because the eclipse is at 28 degrees, 50 solar arc minutes, while Uranus and Taurus 27 degrees and 32 solar arc minutes. So a little bit over a degree away from one another. But honestly, that square, that tension is very good, especially with everything so closely together here, because that tension between the eclipse energy, the sun and the moon, and Uranus, which represents unpredictability and this like instability, but it's instability because the foundations need to be shaked. It's shook. Foundations need to be shook. They need to be shaken in order to allow the structures of that Leo and Pluto generation that's been built up in order to allow those structures to crumble. And that's what that tension, that's what that square is going to represent here. It's like that unpredictable energy of like earthquake energy, which is allowing things to get moving internally and externally in the collective as well. I think that square itself, if anything big were to happen politically on the eclipse, again, there's a lot of energies that kind of hint towards that, but it's that square to me that represents like that foundational shift. That represent that foundational shift. And especially when Uranus moves into Gemini in a couple months, I believe it's in April, we're going to need this square, this tension to happen now in order to allow like the springs or the joints in order to allow the joints that need to be disconnected to disconnect so everything can come to the ground. So that when we get to Gemini, that 0 degree Gemini mark, we're starting brand fucking new. We're starting fresh and can grow from there. Now, the very last thing I want to mention here is the Eros and Psyche asteroids. Now, if you don't know the story of Eros and Psyche in mythology, Eros is the son of Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. Psyche was the youngest of three girls, and her beauty was beyond what anybody had ever seen, right? And people started to worship Psyche for her beauty, and they even made rumors that, oh, maybe she's the daughter or the sister of Aphrodite. We just no. They started to worship Psyche and bring the offerings they reserved for Aphrodite to Psyche. Now you can imagine, Aphrodite is not just the goddess of love and beauty, she's also the goddess of war. And she did not like that. She did not like the fact that her temples were vacant and becoming dusty, and she had not received any offerings because this young lady is taking her thunder. So she tells Eros, hey, my son, I need you to take your, because Eros is equivalent to Cupid, right? I need you to take your love arrows and I want you to go and bring this hideous pig, put it in front of Psyche, hit Psyche with your arrow, have her fall in love with this hideous beast, so then nobody will worship her and they will think she's just a joke and it'll be really funny to me and then everybody will come back to me and love me again. Now, Eros goes to do that. But before he can, do his duty, he sees her and essentially just like falls in love with her because of her beauty. And then they have this whole secret romance where he only visits her in the dead of night because he can't have her know that he is Eros, he is the son of Aphrodite. So he continuously visits her through the dead of night, doesn't let her see his face, and he ends up impregnating her. And her sisters come back and she's like, guys, what do I do? I love this man, but like, what if he's actually just a hideous beast? And like, I don't know who he is. And I need to see him. I need to know who he is. So, but when they first met, Eros made Psyche promise that she would not attempt to look at his face. So that's a promise that she made. So there's already this underlying tension of that. Her sisters convince her that, you know what, when he's asleep, just go and grab the lantern and just shine it on his face so you can see who it is. She says, you know what, I'm going to do it. Next night, she decides to do it. She grabs the lantern, but as she is walking towards Psyche, or as she is walking towards Eros in the night. It's dark, she can't see where she's going. She ends up tripping or fall. Something happens with the arrows where she ends up like stabbing herself before she trips and falls. And as she's tripping and falling, she accidentally spills the hot candle wax onto Eros. So she sees his face because of the arrow. She falls deeply and madly in love with him. He wakes up because of the hot candle wax is poured on him, and he's like, "You've broken your promise to me. I'm pissed off. I'm leaving. You'll never see me again." But now she's deeply in love with the man, right? So he goes back, never tells Aphrodite about this, like, because he knows his mom would be pissed. He goes back, just minds his fucking business, but Psyche cannot handle the loss, right? So she's traveling all over the world, like begging any god or goddess or deity or like nature spirit to help her find this man. She was looking for so long for Eros because she just needs her love. She needs him so badly. And it's so sweet. Even the goddesses were like, Aphrodite's involved in this, I'm not touching it. Good luck, I can't help you. And eventually she says, you know what, I'm going to go to the source. So she goes to Aphrodite, not knowing Aphrodite did not know about their romance or their affair. She said, Aphrodite, I'm in love with Eros, I'm in love with your son, and I can't find him, he's disappeared, I don't know where he went. And she said, this is the first I'm hearing of this, and now I'm pissed off. Oh, you want the hand of my son? You're a mere mortal. So I'm gonna have you do these nearly impossible tasks, similar to Heracles and his 12 labors. She said, I'm going to have you do these tasks. And if you can complete these tasks, you can have the hand of my son. And so she goes for the tasks. And again, nearly impossible. She would not have been able to do it herself. But as she went along, she had the help of nature spirits and sprites and other, fae-like creatures, if you will. They decide to help her just of their own free will because they were like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And they helped her out. They helped her get the first two tasks done. And then the third task, Aphrodite expected to have Psyche die because she said, "Okay, your next task, you're going to go to the underworld and deliver me the box of beauties from Persephone." But if you go to the underworld, pretty much Hermes is the only one that can cross. He's a psychopomp, so he should be the only mortal or deity that can effortlessly cross between the realms, other than Persephone, of course, because she has to come through 6 months there, 6 months here. But other than Persephone, and especially mortals, there should be no deity or mortal that should be able to get to the underworld without dying. But again, she receives miraculous help from these nature spirits, and they tell her, bring 2 pieces of bread, or 4 pieces of bread and 4 coins, or 2 pieces of bread, and I think it's 2 pieces of bread and 2 coins. So she has offerings to give to the river god, the river spirits to deliver her there, and then pay for her journey back. She ends up getting the box of beauties, but she was warned not to open the box of beauties. She opens it anyway. Curiosity gets her in like the final moments, just before she was about to see Eros, and the box of beauties annihilates her, kills her. Meanwhile, Eros finally decides, oh my god, I love this girl. I need to go see her. I don't know what I was thinking running away from her. So as he's like flying back to find her, he talks to the nature spirits and they were like, oh yeah, she was here, but I think she's dead now because like she opened the box of beauty. She wasn't supposed to do that. She's immortal. You can't be doing that. So he flies back, finds her dead on the ground. And he's like, no, my love, and decides to carry her to Zeus to, petition Zeus to make her immortal. Because he's like, I cannot live without her. I need this woman. And she's still pregnant, mind you. While all this is going on, she's still pregnant with her baby. So he brings her to Zeus. Zeus hears what's going on. He's like, you know what? Yeah, I'll grant you immortality. Aphrodite's pissed. She's like, Zeus, no, she wasn't supposed to live. Like, this was my plan all along. Like, people can't be like adorning her and ignoring me. And he was like, well, it's too late. She's already immortal. And eventually, I think she becomes okay with it because she's immortal. Aphrodite becomes okay with it because she's immortal now. And she has her own like sense of deity worship separate from Aphrodite. So Aphrodite gets her offerings back. She gets her temples like revitalized again. And Eros and Psyche live happily ever after. And they have a baby and they name that baby Bliss. Long story short-ish. But with Psyche and Eros together, they are not conjunct right now, but they're both in Gemini. So all of that's to say, when they are both in the same energy, that's almost like an energy of being reunited with one another. So when we look at that story and put it internally, it's like the freeing of the mind, the freeing of the heart, and allowing the heart and the mind to come together to form this harmonious union within. And when they're in Gemini, when they are together in the same sign, not necessarily specifically Gemini, but Gemini is of the intellect. So it's this idea of like clearing out the mind and connecting to the heart through that. But when they're in the same sign, again, it's reuniting energy. So we are getting rid of the stories we were telling ourselves about our past pains, our whatever, the past traumas. We are burning those traumas away, allowing chaos and destruction to take over the stories we once told ourselves, and allowing this energy of the Psyche and Eros togetherness in Gemini, allowing that energy to reprogram our brain to tell new stories because Gemini is a storyteller, to tell ourselves new stories about what it is we want to see grow, what beauty we want to see within ourselves that will be mirrored outwardly, how our stories of what we've been through is not a story of victimhood and trauma and defeat, but one of triumph, which has helped you come to discover that inner flame and that inner passion and bring your inner flame and that drive towards action together to create a bigger flame, right? It's this harmonious energy which starts within, as I keep saying. So this eclipse energy, it's an inward energy, it's an internal energy of refinement and redefinement. We're redefining our stories we're telling ourselves. We're redefining how our neurons connect with one another. We're putting an end to that victim mentality that tells us, no, I can't do this because of this, but saying, you know what? Actually, I can do this despite this. I can do this because of this. It's a redefining moment of recognizing where you've been your own hindrance and where you have blocked yourself off from merging with the collective. Not just to blend in with the crowd, so that all of us are our own unique sparks, our own unique flames that are all coming together to create the bonfire of this collective existence. And this eclipse is the very beginning of that. This eclipse is the very beginning of that. Again, eclipses are endings of old cycles and starting of new ones. This eclipse is the beginning of that. What a gift. What a gift that is. So, this was a long one, and if you stayed this long, thank you. I do plan to make more YouTube videos again. I've missed this long form content a lot, especially with TikTok. That's been my main source of posting. If you are interested, follow me on there, Radius of Aurora. But I'm so used to talking so fast, so I can get all the information out really quickly. And here I have time to like tell the story and allow it to unfold in the timing that it wants to. So definitely expect more from me, probably more in the astrological transit realm in the future. But otherwise, thanks for being here. Brand new beginnings, babe. Brand new beginnings. And I have full body chills. Happy eclipsing. Love y'all. Bye.